I could get used to a view like this. Yep, I'm used to it. Guys, I want a castle.
Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our channel, Paws On Animation.
And today we're celebrating the 14th anniversary of the modern Disney classic, Tangled.
Yay! Now this movie has become one of Disney's best and most fun fairy tale films, as it takes the story of Rapunzel and gives it a new Disney twist. And thank you so much for requesting this, Kate Crusader 77. Woohoo!
But before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, notification for future podcasts and all the pause videos.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing our videos, commenting, subscribing, and so much more. We appreciate you so much, our specialists.
Yes.
So yes, can you believe it's been 14 years?
Yes.
And it marks another milestone that's not a good one.
Unfortunately for them. First off, it's the 50th movie they made at the time. And the second thing would be, it's the last Disney film to feature a romance as the central focus and a love song in a movie. Pretty much.
That is...
It's sort of a little sad. It's one of the bittersweet things.
I need a Rapunzel face right now.
It's one of the only bittersweet things about this film, because they've never made anything else like this since Tangled. There hasn't been a new Tangled. There hasn't been any more romance in the films. It's been such a different landscape now for Disney, despite what you think, and it's a shame because this was definitely one of their best.
So we can be grateful that we have this movie to go back and watch again and again and
Right.
celebrate.
Right.
And we had not watched this in quite a long time, and it was just as exciting and fun as it was
It
the
definitely.
previous times we watched it.
Yes.
So for those of you not familiar, Tangled is a 2010 American animated musical adventure fantasy comedy film.
Yeah, it's like all
Produced
those.
by Walt Disney Studios and released by them as well. And it's loosely based on the German tale Rapunzel in the collection of folk tales published by Brothers Grimm.
And as it goes with the Disney formula, they have been known for taking classic literature and fairy tales and public domain stories and giving them their own twist on them. First, they were just their little tellings of them in the beginning, when they did Snow White and Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty. And now their thing had become taking the stories you know and giving them modern twists, like a what if, a reversal of the story happened, and different little scenarios that gave it something fun, unique for Disney.
Definitely. And this was definitely not only a success on DVD and other forms,
Yes.
because you didn't have the digital releases at that time, but it also was a success at the box office.
Oh, yes.
With a budget of $260 million, it grossed over $592 million worldwide, with a running time of $180 million.
Wow.
And it was originally released in November of 2010.
Wow.
Monies.
So they did, right, money's all the monies. And one of the things we noticed when we start to rewatch the film is that we had a feeling that we haven't felt with Disney movies for at least the recent ones in a long time. It was just an absolute joy and fun to watch the whole time. And that was one of his biggest praises from then into now, is that this is one of the most fun Disney movies ever made. And it was, in a way, like Enchanted, where it was a return to form and calling back to all their old fairy tale movies and their princess movies and giving them a new twist. And it's just one of those movies that has stood the test of time and has become one of their most beloved films ever.
Yes.
And it's still talked about now as like, oh my gosh, people need to talk about this movie more.
Definitely. Now, one of the reasons I think for this movie's success is that it was created like the older Disney films, where there would be a concept and it would take years to come to fruition.
Right.
This was no different. It was originally conceived and proposed by Disney animator Glenn Keane in 2001.
Why?
It spent 6 years in production and of cost has been estimated at $260 million, which, if that's accurate, would make it the most expensive animated feature film ever made.
Wow.
And one of the most expensive films of all time.
Wow, so it had a lot riding on this particular film.
Now remember, in this box office count, we're not including DVD sales
Right.
and digital
Releases,
streaming and so forth, merchandising.
Which wasn't even,
This has been one of the most profitable franchises for Disney of all time.
Yes.
Including, as we know, it becoming a series, and this is one of the times that it deserved to become a series, and it was done perfectly.
Yes.
And they were smart enough to keep the same voice actors
Yes.
in the series and not sound alike.
Right, and the same writers too that did it. So yes, when it came back, it was like it never left, and the fan base was so strong for the movie that both the film and the short film and the series all did successfully. So it's like one of their most perfect franchises.
And I remember you mentioning that it was a blend of CGI and 2D animation.
Yes.
And this is what a lot of people were saying should have happened for Wish. We see how it would have looked looking at Tangled. It would have looked beautiful.
Right.
And even more beautiful because that was 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Think now, as of last year, 13 years later, animation styles and techniques have improved.
Right.
It would have looked fantastic.
Right.
Even better. And they didn't do it.
Exactly.
Now, since we brought up Wish, very quickly we want to say when we were watching it, both of us had the same idea and didn't know it until Rascal said she wasn't gonna, she had a comment to make.
Yeah, during the film, when actually the very beginning, Rapunzel was speaking to Gothel, and my comment that we both ended up having at the same time was that we think that they took Rapunzel's personality and tried to apply it to Asha, which is why she had the quirky personality.
But the funny part was when you said, I'm not gonna.
Yes, I'm gonna say my comments until after the movie.
And I said, I'm gonna make my comment. They tried to make Asha Rapunzel.
Yes.
And ironically, this movie's name was changed to Tangled because they wanted to market it gender neutrally, whatever that means.
I guess so.
She's a female. So
yeah, you would know it's Rapunzel
titled,
anyway.
We know it's Rapunzel. I think it was smart, not because it's gender neutral, but because it was a nice, clever play on what happened.
It made it stand out, too.
Definitely. So it was smart for that reason. And you have so many other elements that work. You have the music.
Yes.
Which was perfect and fantastic.
Yes, every
supporting
song.
Characters, the animal characters.
Yes, two non-talking but expressive animals.
Yes, the fun, the irony.
The banter.
Yes, the little details that made it fun, like how she had that skillet no matter where she went.
Right.
It was even in the end credits showing up on the
the guards now use it. Yeah.
It shows up by itself as well.
It was the most important weapon in the whole movie.
So.
Oh, and we definitely need to bring this one other thing as we were watching the film. When it got to about, let's say, the halfway point and the third act of the film, we noticed something oddly familiar about it. We had kept getting comments on our Wish videos about some of the couple of deleted scenes, especially one featuring Star, looking like it was referencing Tangled. A lot of people kept saying it felt like Tangled. So look, they're referencing Tangled, and we kept seeing those comments over and over again. We hadn't seen the film in a while, so we weren't sure if that was just what it came off as or it was sincere. When we watched the film, there were 2 to 3 scenes in here that were referenced in the deleted concept. So yes, they were planning on doing a whole big homage to Tangled within the movie.
The first one is when Asha was being chased by the Queen running over the bridge.
Yes.
Well, of course, in here, Flynn wasn't being chased by the Queen, but it was the exact same scene with him running over the bridge, riding Max, who looks a heck of a lot. Well, who Star in one of his transformation looks a heck of a lot.
Right. And when they were jumping over the cliff, all they were missing was the goofy yellow, the same thing. And there was the scene with them underwater, and you see the yellow glow from Rapunzel's hair. And then it's actually referenced in one of the deleted scenes when Star's going. So there were multiple Tangled references in that one scene. And we couldn't believe when we saw, the first thing we thought of, because we were editing, was the concept art. And it was almost insane in how many times we go back and watch these various Disney films, including Tangled, and we see how many movies they reference in the deleted scenes.
Yes, it is absolutely fantastic how the creators had taken that much time to pay homage to one of the greatest romances. So when people like to insist, wish isn't supposed to be a romance, well, this says differently.
Yeah,
Tangled
we keep
says
seeing
differently.
stuff. Yeah,
The references say differently. It was definitely meant to be a romance,
right,
despite the opposition.
right. So now with all the characters we definitely got to talk about and their voice actors, what's fantastic about them is that they're supposed to be referencing classic characters and even the original fairy tale, but they all stand out on their own still.
Before we get to that, quickly want to point out how brilliant it was to have a slight adaptation of the story itself, have a villain appear in here who not only was another female villain.
Yes.
But when we were watching it, I said, she's Dracula. She weaved out her hair, and every time she was disappearing and moving, she was taking that cape like Dracula does and disappearing.
Yes.
She was Dracula, and when she couldn't get the hair, the blood,
right,
she would turn old and fizzle until she eventually turned to dust at the end. She was Dracula.
Yes.
That is clever.
Yes.
And brilliant.
Definitely. And you think about it, she works exactly like Dracula.
So yes, let's go to the other characters now. I just wanted to point that out because I thought that was pretty fantastic that was done like that.
Yes. And when you think about it, it's not a large cast of characters. It's actually a pretty small set. But every character has importance to the story. And they all deliver great lines, great dialogue, great humor, great banter, and great callbacks. So it wasn't just, we're just going to keep the list short on the anime line. It was just make sure it was a cohesive cast that fit within the story.
Yes. And they did that fantastically. They could not have done a better job on this movie. It would have been absolutely impossible to do a better job. There's nothing they could have improved.
Yes, they had it right.
A perfect movie in every sense. It is a 100%, 100 out of 10.
Yes.
It is in every way absolutely outstanding.
Yes.
So, as you mentioned, let's talk about the characters, but also talk a little bit about how it was adapted to give it a difference from the original story, with her, how she was taken again by the villain, how she was forced to live in the castle, how she was rescued from, and he wasn't even a prince unless he was a prince of thieves.
Right.
And how she had her little friend Pascal to be with her, which was so sweet. Those little special additions that they made in adaptations, again, made it stand out more.
Right.
So now to the characters.
Yes. Well, first you have Rapunzel, of course, our main lead.
And she, unlike Asha, she looks really quirky and sweet.
And understandably why.
Yes, and her feet were gigantic. I thought that was a great way to make her relatable.
Right.
And she was very beautiful. She had the hair, and she was taught everyone wants her hair. And she was sweet with wonderful personality, but every time you looked at her feet, they were huge.
Right.
And they said, let's put something on her that's just not quite perfect.
Right.
Although they're perfect for her.
Right.
And I thought that was brilliant. She never had shoes on.
No, the whole movie. That was interesting little detail they left in. I guess you could feel the grass and everything.
And you loved her as the character. There was nothing about her that you found saccharine or just too much or off-putting. She was voiced perfectly and she performed perfectly. I guess we can go through the voice actors with each one.
Characters, yeah.
By Mandy Moore, who had become famous with Disney already for not only her singing, but her choreography of other Disney singers.
Yes.
And then she got in here and she made her name to last forever before going on to This Is Us, playing the mom.
Yes.
Rebecca.
And then you had Flynn Rider,
also known as Eugene Fitzbert.
That's why you want to be called that.
Voiced by Zachary Levi.
Yes. And
she liked his name.
Right. And it was such a great twist on, like you said, the prince. It was the prince you wouldn't expect for her.
Prince of Thieves.
Right. And he
an Aladdin shout out.
Yes. And he always had just fantastic lines, and he was a smart A with everybody. He would always be a little bit of a trickster, and it worked because of how trusting she was, and he didn't trust anybody.
What was also wonderful, not only about Zachary Levi, but Mandy Moore, she hadn't done animated voice.
Mm-hmm.
She was perfect. And the same for Zachary Levi. He was known for a TV show I didn't watch. I don't know if anyone can remember.
Oh, I think it was Chuck.
That's probably it. I never watched it, but he was known for that.
Right.
And this was his first voice acting role, and he nailed it. And he didn't even sound like his regular voice.
Right.
He pulled a Cheryl.
Yes!
A Cheryl. You know exactly what I was going to say. And it was perfect. And he was adorable, and you loved him. Even though you know he was a cur, he was supposed to be a cur and a criminal.
Right.
You still adored him.
And what we found out is that at one point they were making the film, these animators brought in a bunch of women to pick out. They have these multiple different versions of Flynn Rider. They couldn't decide which one to pick. So all these women come in and pick which design looked the hottest for him, and that's how he got the one in the movie. It's like when they actually asked the audience, which version do you like? You imagine me hissing whatever, they just kept doing that.
Yes, it was smart. Again, they kept just making smart moves. And he nailed it. It was perfect. He could not have done a better job in this role.
Yes.
And he complimented her. His character complimented Rapunzel.
Yes.
Wonderfully. And she had this naivety that was beginning to go away because she was learning just from that small outing with him.
Yes.
That Mother Gothel had been lying to her. And there was so much for her to see. And the lamps and the lights, because she told it was stars, but they weren't stars. They were lanterns.
Right. Yeah, that's a good callback.
And just with that short time with him, she got to be exposed and informed, and it changed her life forever as well as his.
Yes.
Then let's get to Mother Gothel.
Yes.
Voiced by Donna Murphy.
Mother knows best.
Again, couldn't have cast this role any better.
Right? Yes, and she was actually intimidating. Now, she didn't have magic herself. Rapunzel was the one with the magic hair. Gothel didn't have any whatsoever. But her skill was manipulation. And it worked really well because that's what some of the past female villains or evil queens have had with magic. She still had that part without magic, and it warmed its way throughout the story because she kept sort of gaslighting her throughout the film and or lying to her and or tricking her. She was always trying to make it look like she's one of the best. Right, and doing all this, and you knew like, okay, we know you're not to be trusted. We know you saw what you did,
and you wondered at any point did she actually grow to love her?
Yeah,
because it was a surprise when she said she wanted the white paint, and that it was gonna be a 3-day trip, and she was gonna make it for her.
It was like,
but then clearly she didn't, because when she was out with Eugene, she suddenly turned back up and had been 3 days.
Right.
But Donna Murphy's theatrical musical theater training came through in this performance.
Yes.
She's a 5-time Tony Award nominee, and she's won twice for Best Actress in a Musical for her role in Passion in 94, 95, and as Anna in The King and I, 96, 97. It came through in this performance. She was absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
Another one of the best female Disney villains. And we never mention or think about her, but she should be on that top list with The Wicked Stepmother.
Yes.
and
the evil queen,
Maleficent,
yes.
and
The-
Cruella.
Yes.
And she should be on that list as well.
Yes, absolutely. And then you had, well, two characters didn't talk. You had Pascal, Rapunzel's little chameleon.
She's so cute.
And you had Maximus, the most hilarious
I
horse.
want a horse like Maximus.
Maximus did more work than any of the human guards in that whole kingdom. He was more determined to capture Flynn than any of those guards, and the facial expressions he would make were always so exaggerated.
Yes.
Like he was determined, he had an agenda to accomplish.
And it was perfect. And they showed with Pascal and Maximus that for an animal character to steal the show and be the star, they don't need to talk. Just imagine if the goat had done this in Wish.
Yeah.
And they had done the same thing.
Yes.
He would still be remembered, and those dang plushies would have sold out.
Right.
Because you would have loved him.
Right, exactly.
Now that you mentioned non-speaking characters, we also got to mention that the king and queen never spoke out.
No, not one time. Which was so jarring when you got to the series and they were speaking all the time. It was like, this is weird.
Yes. Now back to speaking characters. We had Hook Hand Thug, voiced by Brad Garrett, and the Big Nose Thug, voiced by Jeffrey Tambor.
Yes. And they were immediately lovable because the first thing you think of, he's trying to get her to turn back and go back to the tower, and he takes her to the most, supposed to be this sketchy looking place, and she's always has her guard up with the frying pan aiming at them, and then it looks like, yeah, they're just gonna beat the crud out of Flynn. And then when she talks about having a dream to see the world and everything, haven't any of you ever had a dream?
Yes.
And then it starts off one of them, I had a dream once. And they have their own little song number. Everyone had the most fanciful dreams and the sweetest memories ever. It's so hilarious.
And it was perfect. Every scene was perfect.
Everything
was
about
perfect.
this, yes, every single part of this movie was just fantastic. And this was like the animated equivalent to Enchanted.
Absolutely. We gotta mention Ron Perlman as Stabbington brother.
Both of them,
the
yeah.
Stabbington brothers. He was perfect and didn't even recognize him.
Right.
So he did a great job at having range. And one standout was Richard Kill as Vlad. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Bond movies, I watched them because of our Nana. He played Jaws, the villain, in Moonraker and one other Bond movie. So him being cast in that role was brilliant.
Yes.
It was absolutely brilliant for those who were familiar with him at that time. I wasn't at that time. I did not know that's who did it, but for those who were familiar with him, it was brilliant casting.
Yes.
And then the last two we can mention are MC Gainey as Captain of the Guard and Paul F. Tompkins as Short Thug.
Yes. And yet again, two great casting as well. Everyone was casted perfectly. And the ones who did not speak still were fantastic characters.
Now I gotta mention that this movie earned so many positive reviews and so many nominations. It was nominated for Best Original Song at the 83rd Academy Awards, and it was Richard Kill's last film role before he died in 2014.
Okay.
The film was released on DVD and Blu-ray in March of 2011, so the very next year. And there was also a short film called Tangled Ever After,
Which shows the wedding,
released
yes.
in 2012. And then, of course, the TV series in 2017. And again, all of the marketing, merchandising, just so much that keeps this franchise alive. Even though the series now has been off TV for a while.
Yes.
You remember it for being just as brilliant as this movie. They had a couple of hiccups that shouldn't have happened, like not giving Varian
A
his
spin-off.
Yes, but it really almost matched up to the movie. And now to think about it, Cassandra reminds me of Mother Gothel in terms of how she looked and was designed.
And now it makes sense when you watch the show and you find out the twist. It makes perfect sense.
Yes. As we mentioned, the music was done by, we didn't mention it was done by Alan Menken.
Yes.
But the musical score and soundtrack were perfect as well.
Yes. One of the best soundtracks ever.
And the lyrics were written by Glenn Slater. So It was his return to scoring animated films because he hadn't done any since Home on the Range.
Right,
at that
oh
time.
my gosh, yeah.
And a lot of songs were actually cut from the film.
Oh,
so there
really?
are some that we didn't get to hear. There were 5.
5
unbelievably.
songs?
And it would have been nice if those had been used in another film, like Whoosh
Right.
or some other movie. But they chose to cut them out, and
Huh. Well, maybe you can hear them on bonus features or online. That'd be nice.
great. Yes. So if you guys know about that, let us know in the comments. So again, it got high praise. It's one of the highest grossing movies of all time. It's it's termed Disney animated films. And we're not talking about Inside Out now, which is Pixar technically. We're not talking about that. We mean in terms of these type of movies that they used to make, that
Right.
they became known for. And like we said, you miss these movies. You miss these type of movies. You
Yes.
miss them.
Yes, and that's why people were going back and watching all these older films. And Tangled is technically not as old as other ones, but this was the last Disney film that really called back to their legacy and their past film thing. Like I said, this was the anime equivalent of Enchanted, and we would have gotten a third film that would encapsulate 100 years of Disney films, and it's a little sad that we didn't get that, but we still appreciate Tangled because no matter how many times you see it, no matter how long it's been, the movie holds up.
Absolutely. If you want us to cover Tangled Ever After, let us know in the comments. There was also a manga that we would love to
Oh
read
gosh, seriously.
and cover that as well. And there was a stage adaptation, Tangled the Musical.
Oh my
That came
gosh.
out in 2015, featuring 3 new songs written by Alan Menken and Glenn Slater.
Really?
And in February of 2024, it was reported that Disney Theatrical Group is developing a new stage adaptation of the film with a workshop underway.
Really?
So
Wow.
it's still, again, a favorite. It's still a successful franchise that just keeps giving. And there's no way that this is going to disappear
No.
for a while. And hopefully they keep the romance in it as it originally was in the movie.
Right.
I really hope that it's not changed. Now, for those of you who think there's too much romance, I respect your position.
Yeah.
But for this particular franchise, that is the core and the heart of this franchise, and to take it and remove it, it just won't be the same.
Right.
And there will be an outcry and an outrage. So hopefully
Yep.
they don't tamper with it and leave it the same.
Right.
So thank you for joining us for this longer podcast. We could keep
Yeah.
talking about it and going on and on.
Right,
and
it'll
on.
never end.
But we're going to stop here and say that if you've seen the movie Tangled, let us know in the comments below. We know you loved it. Let
Yes.
us know what your favorite scenes are and who your favorite characters are in the comments.
Right. Or
And
a
if-
favorite song.
Yes, and if you haven't seen it, you gotta see it. It is wonderful. You can watch it in place of Wish if you love the concept like we do, and get lots and lots of joy
Mhm.
from watching this movie. I'm sure it's on Disney Plus. You can purchase it.
Yep.
Come back and tell us what you think.
And if you haven't already, subscribe for updates to your favorite anime series, anime shows, and all things animation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cape Crusader 77, for asking about this on several occasions.
Yes.
We're so happy to have done this for you. Thank you for being a loyal subscriber and
A
commenter.
fan, yes.
Yes, we appreciate always seeing your comments, as well as the rest of you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing our videos, subscribing, commenting, liking them, and so much more. As always,
You are special. Thanks so much for watching Rascal Entertainment.
and I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a toontastic day.
Peace.